started, and this way it gave people extra time to log in. So hello and welcome to the Riverside County Law Library and the League of Women Voter Riverside's virtual ballot measure information session. My name is Jenna Pontius, and I'm with the Riverside County Law Library. It's 32 days until Election Day, and at today's session, representatives from the League of Women Voters are going to discuss 12 California ballot measures. Following the discussion, there will be a Q&A session. Just some housekeeping items. You've all been muted upon entry, and please keep yourselves muted until the Q&A session. You can use the chat to input questions that you have. You don't have to have your video on unless you want to. And in the chat, I also put a link to the Riverside County Law Library's voting resources page, and then I put a link to the League of Women Voters page. So for over the last 65 years, the League of Women Voters Riverside has studied and championed numerous local public policies and issues and has become a respected voice at Riverside city and county government meetings. Local members have held countless candidate forums, like one yesterday, hosted and spoken at numerous public meetings, distributed thousands of voter information guides, and maintained a website with up-to-date information on elections and local and state and national issues. So the current League of Women Voters Riverside president, Joan Donahue, she joined the League of Women Voters 20 years ago, and she will be doing the slides of this presentation, and then Greta and Patricia will be assisting her, and they're both members of the League of Women Voters. So thank you for presenting this and agreeing to do this. I'm really excited. There's a lot of ballots, and so with that, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if we get it. Your file. Okay, let's see here. It's a little bit different. Let me find. Oh, and I thought I'm getting better at Zoom, and now I'm like, where is the file? Wait a second. Let me just try. There we go. Can you see it? Hello?
No, we cannot see it.
Oh. Okay. You know what? I did it the way that with Zoom, if you have it all set up and you have it diminished, and then you go and you click on it and it pops right up. Now this time I've got to figure out how to get it. Let's see. Always something. Okay. I'm sorry, everybody, I have my documents. It's in it seems to be like in a goofy file.
Can you would it help if you put it on your desktop and then just got it from there? Or do you want to try sending it to me?
Okay, let me, because my PowerPoint stuff isn't popping up in my documents. So I have it right here. You know what? I hate to do this, but I might tell my husband to come in here for a second. Seriously. Hey, Tom? I can't find this PowerPoint to put up on the screen. It's not the same as. See, I have it diminished. I have it diminished here, but it wouldn't pop up. So I looked at my documents.
What's your reading?
No, I'm sorry, Jenna. After all this, we may end up. You know what? It's because I think it should be in my documents. Wait a minute. It was on yours.
It's under quick access, and maybe it's recently opened.
Wait a minute. There it is. I don't. That's not going to work. You guys probably still can't see it, can you?
No, we can't see it.
How do we do this? There it is. Should I send it to Jenna?
Yeah, send it email to our guys. Can you share your screen?
I clicked on share and share file, and then it's like it's not here. Where is it?
Look under quick access. Nothing's showing.
Well, while we're waiting, at the library we have easy voter guides. So if you wanted one, you can call the library and we can set up for you to pick it up. So I can put the library's phone number in the chat.
Okay, it's loading. See it now?
No, I cannot see it.
It's on my screen. You guys went up and already.
No, okay, cancel that.
Oh, see, one person says that they can see it, but I cannot.
What do we do?
Can Greta see it?
Who? Okay, so one person can see it?
Yeah.
I cannot see it.
Well, I don't know what to do except.
Oh, wait, there's other people who are on who are now saying they can see it. Do you suppose it's the three of us?
And I need to see if and I'm not moving the pictures. The picture.
Can you use the arrows?
No, it's not. The pictures, they're not advancing. So, I'm not sure how to do this. I think we're just going to, I hate this, you guys, after all that, but I think we're just going to have to get going and do without. Do you think?
Yeah.
Well, some people can see it, but I don't know.
Then there's the second problem is when I click advance, the pictures don't change. So, and it doesn't look like it's, when it loads and you can see all the stuff across the top and down the side.
Is that arrow right there? Oh, that's your mouse.
That's my mouse. So, I keep clicking share. Now that goes back to that and it's already loaded up. Well, I think we're just going to have to go without because it's not popping up the way I thought it would.
Can you send her a copy of the PowerPoint and then she can email it out?
Yeah, or she said she had easy voter guides. That works just as well. Well, we'll just, how do I unshare? I mean, I can see it and it's not going to go anywhere, so I might as well just take it off. Oh, I'm so sorry. Stop video. No, that was me. Okay. I don't know how to get it off. No, let's leave the meeting.
Oh.
Stop sharing. Okay.
Did you hit that share contact button?
Yes. I don't know what else to do, you guys.
Should we just go on with it? And if you want, you can email it to me and I can see if I can share it. Or you can just email it to me and I can share it with the participants. I can email it out.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out now how to lose the picture that I've got on my screen.
Why don't you exit and then email it to her and then go back in?
No, it's too much time, I think. I just want to take it down now.
What if you just push escape? Will that
Sorry?
take it down?
What?
If you just push escape? Will escape get you out of it?
Okay. No. and I'm looking around on I'm clicking around on all the stuff, and it just keeps taking me back. So, you know what? Let's just get started, and then when Pat comes up, because I'll go first, and then when Pat comes up, then I'll play with it some more.
Okay.
Okay, because otherwise, I'm sorry, it's all like, it's getting late. And, no, this will be helpful enough. And what's important is, every 2 years, here we are the legislators. And so it's important to go over the information just so that you have a good idea of what you're going to be voting on, because we're making the laws, and what we decide, only we can change them. So let's just go ahead and start. The first one is Proposition 14, and it's basically just a classic bond measure, and it's for funding stem cell research. It authorizes $5.5 billion in state general obligation bonds for stem cell research, training, and construction of research facilities. In 2004, we approved Proposition 71, which gave researchers in California a constitutional right to conduct stem cell research, and we approved $3 billion in general bonds for the program. So the original $3 billion has almost been completely spent, and the stem cell program depends almost entirely on state bonds. So that's why this one's very important to them. So it will cost about $8 billion to pay off the principal and interest on the bonds, and estimated to cost us about $260 million a year. In support, there's a political action committee made up of several foundations based on brain and central nervous system conditions, including Parkinson's, ALS, diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer, sickle cell, and leukemia. They've raised about $7 million to try and get your vote. They say California stem cell funding has led to significant advances in treatments and cures for many diseases, including almost 3,000 medical discoveries. Prop 14 is supported by over 70 patient advocate organizations. It increases patient access and affordable treatments, and provides patients, their families, and caregivers with financial assistance. Opposed, the No on 14 is a registered committee that hasn't been reporting spending any money, raising or spending money. It's 2 neurologists that signed on no on the argument. They say the state should not be spending billions of dollars on stem cell research with so many people out of work. Also, previous funding has not yielded the promised results for treatments or economic benefits. Private investors and companies have made great strides in stem cell research and cures. Now, on to Proposition 15. Lots of interest in this one, probably because it will have the biggest impact directly in California. Background: in 1978, Californians approved Proposition 13, required that residential, commercial, and industrial properties are taxed based on their purchase price. The tax is limited to no more than 1% of the purchase price, with an annual adjustment equal to the rate of inflation of 2%, whichever is less. This proposal creates a split roll. It assesses taxes on commercial and industrial properties at market value, while continuing to assess taxes on residential properties based on the purchase price. If passed, here's the proposal. If passed, Prop 15 would generally require that commercial property be reassessed to market value on a periodic basis. There would be no change in the rules for reassessment of residential and farm property. Commercial property will be reassessed at market value not less than every 3 years at 1%. If all property owned by a business has a fair market value of $3 million or less, that property would continue to be assessed based on the purchase price. Reassessment of commercial property could be phased in starting with tax year 2022. Small business would not pay any tax on personal property. That's like business equipment. And larger businesses would not pay taxes on the first $500,000. The money for local governments, so it's about 60% of the total, would be distributed according to existing property tax formulas. Money for schools, that's about 40% of the total, would go into a state fund allocated among school districts using the same per pupil funding formulas the state currently uses. Fiscal impact for this one is between $6.5 billion to $11.5 billion. The range is big to account for the administrative costs and how much commercial property will be worth each year. Those in support, Schools and Communities First is a big coalition in support of the measure. A long list of supporters, elected officials, and advocacy groups. They have raised a little over $40 million. They say, while the wealthiest corporations avoid paying their fair share, our schools have the most crowded classrooms in the nation, and our local communities are struggling to respond to the impact of COVID-19. 10% of the wealthiest businesses will provide more than 90% of the revenue. In opposition, we have 9 opposition committees that have been formed. They have a long list of opponents, largely business groups. They've raised $30 million. They say Prop 15 would trigger the largest property tax increase in California. Additional costs will ultimately raise prices for customers and will make it harder for people to start small businesses. And we'll move on. The next 4 propositions that we have are all constitutional amendments that were put on the ballot by the state. And so we'll turn that over to Pat, and I will try and lose my little voting bear here. Pat, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yeah, kind of.
Is that better?
Yeah, just yell for a little bit.
Okay. I'm having to call in on my cell phone. I couldn't get the audio to go on, and the video's not working for me either. Okay, so Proposition 16 allows public agencies to consider diversity. So the background here is in 1996, Californians passed Proposition 209, which prohibits the state from granting preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. The California Assembly contends that in wake of Proposition 209, the state has seen steep declines in diversity in higher education, the workforce, government contract awards, and increases in income inequality and equal pay for equal work. The proposal repeals Proposition 209 and requires the state to follow federal guidelines. The proposal does not recommend any programs or plans to be reinstated. Federal courts have ruled that strict racial quotas and racial point systems in higher education admissions are unconstitutional, but that individualized, holistic reviews that consider race when tailored to serve an important interest, such as educational diversity, are constitutional. In support, there's a coalition known as Opportunity for All that has raised $5 million. There's also a long list of Democratic legislators and Democratic-leaning organizations. Their position is that despite living in the most diverse state in the nation, women and people of color currently are discriminated against. We are at a historic moment and need to strengthen California by overturning discrimination in all areas. In opposition, you have Californians for Equal Right, saying Californians for Equal Right is the opposing coalition. They've raised $150,000. Their position is that the state should treat everyone equally. When deciding who gets into college or who gets a government job, we should not favor one racial or ethnic group over another. I'm going to move on to Proposition 17, the voting rights restoration for persons on parole. Here, the proposal is a constitutional amendment that will allow people on parole for felony convictions to vote in California. Currently, the California Constitution disqualifies people with felonies from voting until their imprisonment and parole are completed. This ballot measure would keep imprisonment as a disqualification for voting, but parolees could vote. The background is in California, a person who has legally finished their prison sentence the day they are released from in California, a person has legally finished their prison sentence the day they are released from prison. Parole is not an extension of a prison sentence. It is a post-sentence period of community supervision that occurs while people reintegrate into the community. People who are in county jail, on probation, or on every other form of post-release community supervision are allowed to vote, but people on parole are not. California will join 17 other states that allow people on parole to vote. Fiscal impact. Prop 17 will require the state to update its voting system to reflect that people on parole are eligible to vote, a one-time cost in hundreds of thousands of dollars. In support, the Free the Vote Coalition is the registered group. They have not reported raising any money. There is another proposition with strong support from the Democratic Party and liberal-leaning public policy organizations. Their position is that when people complete their prison sentence, they should be encouraged to reenter society and have a stake in their community. Restoring voting rights does that. Nearly 50,000 Californians who have returned home from prison can't vote even though they're raising families, holding jobs, paying taxes, and contributing to society in every way. In opposition, there is no organized opposition. The ballot argument in the state voter guide against Prop 17 is submitted by the founder of a crime victims organization. She states that parole in California is for serious and violent criminals who have victimized innocent citizens. Giving people on parole social equality before rehabilitation will add to the victim's pain and suffering. Parole is to provide rehabilitation before full liberty, including voting rights, is restored. Okay, Prop 18, primary voting for 17-year-olds. This will allow 17-year-olds who will be 18 at the time of the next general election to vote in the primary elections and special elections. Assemblymember Kevin Mullen, a Democrat from San Mateo, introduced this constitutional amendment. 18 states and Washington, D.C. currently allow eligible 17-year-olds to vote in primaries. The fiscal impact is the cost for county election offices to add more voters to the rolls, and that's estimated at $1 million. There are no campaign committees or funds raised to either support or oppose this amendment. Assemblymember Mullen is the author of the pro-argument in the state ballot guide. Riverside State Senator Roth is a co-signer. They say that when 17-year-olds can't vote in the primary, it discourages them from voting in the general election when they are 18 because they didn't pick the candidates that are on the ballot. This encourages young people to be involved in a lifelong journey of voting, one of the most essential factors in democracy. The Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association weighs in for the opposition. They say 17-year-olds have no real-world experience. Most have not had to work to support themselves, nor make their own way to pay for taxes, food, rent, etc. They have no frame of reference to make vital decisions voters make for themselves and all other members of society. Okay, Proposition 19. This is the last constitutional amendment from the legislature. Okay. The background here is currently eligible homeowners in some counties can transfer their property tax assessments to a new home of the same or lesser market value, which allows them to move without paying higher taxes. Homeowners who are eligible for tax assessment transfers are persons over 55 years old, persons with severe disabilities, and victims of natural disasters and hazardous waste contamination. Parents or grandparents can transfer primary residential properties to their children or grandchildren without the property tax assessment resetting to the market value. This proposal allows people over 55, people who are disabled, and people affected by natural disaster to transfer their property tax assessments anywhere within the state and allow assessments to be transferred to a more expensive home with an upward adjustment. This increases the number of times that persons over 55 years old or with severe disabilities can transfer their tax assessments from one transfer to three. Inherited homes that are not used as principal residences, such as second homes or rentals, will be assessed at the market value when transferred. Allocates most resulting state revenues and savings, if any, to fire protection services. The fiscal impact is some parts of the measure would increase property tax revenue. Other parts would decrease it. More homeowners could get property tax savings when moving from one home to another, and this would reduce property taxes. However, the measure allows more people to buy and sell homes without facing an increased property tax bill. This would probably increase the number of homes sold each year. Buyers not in a special group would be assessed for the current market value of the home, an increase in property tax above what the former resident was paying. Overall, local property taxes would probably increase in the tens of millions of dollars. In support, they have raised $50 million largely from real estate interest. Their position is that people should not have to pay higher taxes on a new home if they lose their home in a disaster. Proposition 19 closes tax loopholes on inherited properties not used as primary residences, directing increased tax revenues to fire protection, schools, and local government. There are no committees formed in opposition. No money has been raised in opposition. However, from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, they say California voters have said clearly they do not want property reassessed to market value when transferred between parents and children or grandparents and grandchildren. Now, Sacramento politicians are trying to take these protections away from California families so they can raise taxes again. Children could be forced by the higher taxes to sell their family's property. And those are your constitutional amendments on the ballot.
Okay, thanks, Tricia. So, Jenna, I sent you the file if you want to give it a shot, except I still can't figure out how to get mine off of there. I don't see an option like stop share. So we'll just keep going. Because we're on to Proposition 20 now. Changes to criminal penalties and parole. For the past 20 years, Californians have legislated reductions on tough-on-crime policies. California legislature reduced punishment for parole violators. We've recategorized some nonviolent crimes as misdemeanors. And Prop 57, giving inmates convicted of certain nonviolent offenses a chance for early release. That's one of the key ones. So with Proposition 20, this leniency pendulum swings back. Prop 20 changes designation of some crimes, would make specific types of theft and fraud crimes, including firearm theft, vehicle theft, and unlawful use of credit cards, chargeable as misdemeanors or felonies, rather than strictly misdemeanors. Would require persons convicted of certain misdemeanors that were classified as either misdemeanors or felonies before 2014 to submit to the collection of DNA samples for state and federal databases. This includes shoplifting, grand theft, drug possession, domestic violence, and prostitution with a minor. Changes to parole. Currently, felons convicted of nonviolent crimes would be released on parole upon completing their sentence with the longest imprisonment term. Prop 20 would require the Parole Review Board to consider additional factors, such as age, marketable skills, attitude about the crime, and mental condition, as well as circumstances of any previous crimes. The ballot initiative would also define 51 crimes and sentence enhancements as violent in order to exclude them from the Parole Review Board. Fiscal impact on this one: increased state and local correctional costs and court costs, likely in the tens of millions of dollars annually. In support, we have Keep California Safe. It is the main coalition. They've raised $3 million. They say Prop 20 would not increase the prison population. It would only ensure that people convicted of these crimes serve their full sentences. Prop 20 will help stop car break-ins, shoplifting, and other theft that has been on the rise. In opposition, Californians against the prison spending scam. They've raised over $5 million. They say Californians have overwhelmingly voted to reduce wasteful prison spending. Prop 20 reverses that progress. Rehabilitating people before prison release is the most effective way to improve public safety. Prop 20 would eliminate funding for what works and waste money on more prisons that we don't need. And on to 21. This one is going to sound real familiar. Prop 10 was on the 2018 ballot. It gave cities and counties the right to impose rent control however they saw fit. Even though Prop 10 mandated nothing, real estate interests spent almost $75 million to convince voters that Prop 10 would freeze development of new apartment buildings and stunt the growth of affordable housing. Their arguments worked. Prop 10 lost in 56 out of 58 counties and by a 20% margin statewide. Rent control proponents believe California voters generally like the idea of rent control as a tool for affordable housing, but voters were worried that there were not enough specifics in the proposition. So rent control supporters are back with Prop 21, and they add a few limitations. Cities and counties could apply rent control to housing that is more than 15 years old. Prop 21 would only apply to landlords who own more than 2 housing units. Allow local governments to impose limits on rent increases when a new renter moves in. Require that rent control laws allow landlords a fair rate of return. Bottom line of this one is the fiscal effects of the measure depends on how communities respond to the measure, how they implement it. So the value of rental housing could decline if rents go down. Could have an effect on the real estate market and could lead to a decrease in property taxes paid by the owners of rent-controlled buildings. Some renters would spend less on rent, be less likely to be priced out of their rental homes, and have more spendable income, while landlords would have less spendable income. In support, Homeowners and Tenants United is a coalition in support of the ballot measure. The campaign is sponsored by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. They have raised $24 million. They say even small increases in rent forces more families into homelessness, a burden on the entire community. Many seniors and veterans presently are left with too few resources for food, medical care, and other needs. Prop 21 guarantees landlords a reasonable profit. Then in opposition, as you can imagine, 4 PACs have been registered. The largest is Californians for Responsible Housing. These are largely real estate interests, one large one out of New York City. They've raised $53 million. They say more than 60% of Californians rejected this type of scheme in 2018. Rent control results in less available, less affordable housing. Prop 21 will stop new housing from being built, cost jobs, and hurt the economy. So there's that. And now we're on to Greta with the famous Prop 22. Right, Greta?
Well, I think this is the one that's getting the most TV ads for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I have the last 4 propositions. Proposition 22, rideshare and delivery drivers. The background on this one. It's best to know upfront that this proposition is sponsored by Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and other delivery companies. During the 2019 legislative session, the legislature passed Assembly Bill 5. The law codified a state Supreme Court ruling, making it much harder for companies to treat their workers as independent contractors rather than full-fledged employees. In practice, it threatened the business models of companies like Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash, all of which rely on an army of phone-toting workers to provide their various services. In the months since the California Attorney General has sued Uber and Lyft for violating the new law, and California regulators declared their drivers to be employees. Thus, welcome to Proposition 22. The proposal is that rideshare and delivery drivers will remain independent contractors, but businesses will be required to provide alternative benefits. And those benefits are a basic net earning based on 120% of the state's or municipality's minimum wage, healthcare subsidies, occupational accident insurance, and accidental death insurance, and also 30 cents per mile and a limit to the hours worked during a 24-hour period. Support for Proposition 22. Save app-based jobs and services. They have raised $110 million. Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash have donated $30 million each. They say, and I quote, classifying drivers as employees as required under Assembly Bill 5 would lead to longer wait times, higher prices, and less access to rideshare and delivery services. Like Assembly Bill 5, Proposition 22 would improve delivery and rideshare work by requiring companies to provide new benefits and expand public safety protections. End of quote. Opposition. The Coalition to Protect Riders and Drivers is leading the campaign in opposition to the ballot measure. They have raised over $3 million, primarily from unions. They say, this measure is a brazen attempt by some of the richest corporations in California to avoid paying minimum wage, health care, paid sick leave, unemployment insurance, and workers' compensation coverage. 78% of drivers are from communities of color, and 70% work more than 30 hours a week. Fiscal impact. It's pretty much negligible. If rideshare businesses stay cheap, drivers can work more, earn more money, and pay a little more income tax. Okay, Proposition 23, kidney dialysis clinics. This is another do-over measure, this one for the 2018 Proposition 8. For years, the Service Employees International Union has been at war with the for-profit dialysis clinic businesses in the state. After unsuccessful efforts to unionize clinic staff, the SEIU brought forth Proposition 8 in 2018. It was a convoluted proposal meant to improve clinics' operating conditions by threatening to decrease their profits. The dialysis clinics spent over $110 million to convince voters that the proposal would drive dialysis clinics out of business in California. They cruised to victory. SEIU is back with a proposal focused on state regulations for clinics. This proposal will require at least one licensed physician on site during treatment at outpatient kidney dialysis clinics, or at least one nurse practitioner or physician assistant on site. It will require clinics to report dialysis-related infection data to state and federal governments. It will require state approval for clinics to close or reduce services. And it will prohibit clinics from discriminating against patients based on the source of payment for care. Fiscal impact. Increased state and local health costs, likely in the low tens of millions of dollars annually due to increased dialysis treatment costs. Support. The Californians for Kidney Dialysis Patient Protection is leading the campaign in support of the ballot initiative. The SEIU United Health West is sponsoring the campaign with $6 million. They say clinics are unsanitary and ill-equipped. Operators encourage profit over patient care. Big dialysis corporations make billions of dollars annually, yet the largest company in California spends only 73% of its revenue toward providing patient care. California dialysis companies charge patients with private insurance an average of $150,000 for a year of dialysis treatment, a 350% markup from the cost of providing care. Those opposing Proposition 23. Stop the dangerous and costly dialysis proposition. That is the campaign's committee. 3 major dialysis clinic businesses have donated over $63 million to defeat this measure. They say nearly half of the 600 clinics in California would become financially unsustainable, resulting in clinic closures and cutbacks that would dangerously jeopardize access to dialysis care that these patients need to survive. They go on to say dialysis clinics are already strictly regulated and provide high quality care. Proposition 24. This amends the consumer privacy laws. This is an initiative statute. In 2018, California lawmakers passed the California Consumer Privacy Act. It went into effect on July 1st, 2020. The Consumer Privacy Act gives consumers the right to find out what data companies are collecting from them, to opt out of having it collected, and to have that data scrubbed. It's best to let you know up front, the campaign for Proposition 24 is funded entirely by one individual, Alistair McTaggart, a San Francisco real estate developer. The proposal is 52 pages long, causing some confusion among analysts. The proposal, the people would have some increased power over their personal data. Consumers could contact companies to prevent them from sharing or using sensitive personal information. This includes location data, health information, and private communications. Proposition 24 would also create a state agency to enforce these rules that issue fines to companies that break laws. The fiscal impact of Proposition 24, increased annual costs of roughly $10 million for a new state agency to monitor compliance and enforcement of consumer privacy laws. An unknown impact on state and local tax revenues due to the impact of businesses from these new requirements. Support of Proposition 24. Mr. McTaggart has formed the Californians for Consumer Privacy PAC and is the sole contributor of close to $5 million. On the state side, Mr. McTaggart says, the world's biggest corporations are collecting deeply personal and private information about all of us. Sadly, our current laws aren't strong enough to protect us or our families from those who would abuse our most personal information. End of quotes. Opposition. There is no registered committee, but there is opposition. They say that Proposition 24 rewrites the new Consumer Privacy Act, which just went into effect in July of this year, before we even know what needs to be fixed. The ballot summary makes the measure sound good, but its 52 pages are full of fine print with privacy reductions and giveaways to Facebook, social media platforms, and big tech companies that misuse our personal information. End of quote. And the last proposition, Proposition 25. This is a referendum to overturn a 2018 law, Senate Bill, State SB 10, that replaced, let me start over. This is a referendum to overturn the 2018 law that replaced money bail system with a system based on public safety risk. A referendum has you vote yes to uphold Senate Bill 10, which would replace cash bail with risk assessments for detained suspects awaiting trials. A no vote would be to repeal Senate Bill 10, thus keeping in place the use of cash bail for detained suspects awaiting trials. The background. Proposition 25 is all about Senate Bill 10. Basically, it asks for your approval or disapproval of the Senate bill. Senate Bill 10 would replace the state's cash bail system with risk assessments to determine whether a detained suspect should be granted pretrial release and under what conditions. The risk assessments would categorize suspects as low, medium, or high risk. Suspects deemed as having a low risk of failing to appear in court and a low risk to public safety would be released from jail, while those deemed a high risk would remain in jail with a chance to argue for their release before a judge. Those deemed a medium risk could be released or detained depending on the local court rules. Senate Bill 10 would exempt suspects of misdemeanors with exception from needing a risk assessment to be released. Senate Bill 10 would require the Superior Court to establish pretrial assessment divisions which would conduct risk assessments and make recommendations for conditions of release. Fiscal impact. Impact on state and local governments is hard to predict. We could see spending increase in mid-hundreds of millions per year, depending on the increase in court costs for bond hearings, and savings in the high tens of millions per year due to a smaller jail population. Support for Proposition 25. Yes on 25 is leading the campaign to support a yes vote and to uphold Senate Bill 10. Another long list of Democrats, a few organizations and unions. They have raised over $8 million. And they say, the current bail system is unfair. If you cannot afford bail, you must stay in jail. Proposition 25 means that decisions will be based on public safety, not a person's ability to pay. People who are eventually found not guilty or even not charged may be stuck with large debts to pay off the bail or the fees. Those opposed, Californians against the reckless bail scheme. They are leading the campaign in support of a no vote to repeal Senate Bill 10. It is financed by the bail bond industry and has a long list of supporters. They have raised $6 million. They say releasing people from jail will make our communities less safe. Proposition 25 will cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars a year, overburdening courts and creating a new bureaucracy. There you have it.
So, thank you. I see something. I'm screen sharing, but I don't think anybody else can see it. Were you going to speak on Measure Q?
Actually, we weren't sure how many folks you had here today from the city of Riverside. Those are the charter amendments. So I don't know if you wanted us to go over those as well. The local city of Riverside measures.
So I didn't ask people what city they were in. So
no, I see. I can see Deborah, and she's giving the thumbs down.
Okay.
So we have one vote for no.
So we can move to questions then, and then if they wanted to add to more votes. So if there are no more questions or comments, and you can expect an email from me, then we can go ahead and close out our session, unless there's speak now or forever hold your peace. And thank you to Joan, Greta, and Patricia. I really appreciate you guys doing this presentation for us and working through the technology. Thank you all again for working through our technical difficulties.